Hey there, this is Linda Malcor, and I'm being interviewed today on writing fiction. So my friend's going to read me some questions, and I will do my best to answer them.
When did you first call yourself a writer?
I first called myself a writer in third grade. My teacher had given us an assignment to write 10 sentences. And I got into the story and decided I wanted to write a whole lot more than 10 sentences and decided I was going to write 10 pages. And I wrote a 10-page Halloween story and she made it into a book. And then she liked it so much, we got another teacher to help us, and I and some of my friends turned it into a play for the school. And we acted it out in front of all the upperclassmen. And so that was when I first decided I was a writer.
How many books have you written, and which is your favorite?
Is this nonfiction?
Fiction. This is your...
Oh, fiction. Okay, I've written 4 novels that are published, and then I've written several others that have not been published. I've also written several screenplays. I lost count of how many I did of those. One was optioned and the others went straight to video.
Okay. Do you write under a pseudonym? Why or why not?
I used to write under a pseudonym, but I wasn't getting published in it, and my agent didn't like that I was using a pseudonym because my nonfiction writing was more famous than my fiction writing, and so he had me start using my real name. I was using L.A. Malcor for my fiction to be distinguished from my nonfiction, where I was using Linda A. Malcor, but I just started changing everything to Linda A. Malcor, and sales improved.
What inspired you to be a writer?
Ooh, what inspired me to be a writer? I've just always liked storytelling. I loved reading, and my grandmother used to tell stories a lot when she was over at our house, and it's just something that ran in the family. I found out after my dad died when I was 6 that he was a writer. One of his teachers sent us some of his stories after he died, and I felt like it was a go ahead and do this thing that you love type situation, and so I started writing stories.
How does writing impact family life?
Writing impacts family life a lot because it takes a lot of time to write things, especially books. When I had my kids, I didn't have time to write during the day, so I got writing really late at night. Didn't get much sleep, but the joy I got from writing was worth it. I had to kind of put my kids in playpens and stuff like that when I needed to respond to colleagues and the press and my agent and different people during the day, and that they didn't like that much. But I kept up my career while I was raising my kids, and I have gone back to writing full-time now that I'm divorced.
What is your writing process like? Are you more of a plotter or a pantser?
I am more of a pantser. I started out being a plotter because I was working mainly in screenplays, and it's a very strict structure to them. So I would have a bulletin board, and I would use 4x6 cards with my different plot points and stuff, and put them all in order. What I found out was that that made my writing very stiff, and it was hard to relate to. So I started, I went back to prose, to the novels and short stories, and I had kind of a general, by page 30, I want to be doing this, and by page 60, I want to be doing that, and this is where I want to start, and this is where I want to stop, and other than that, I just had my characters designed, my world designed, and put the characters in the situation in the world and just see what happened.
What time of day do you do your most writing?
I do my best writing at night, particularly if it's raining. I love the rain, to write to the rain. But because of when people are awake, I find myself these days writing in the afternoon and then really late at night because I write with people from Italy as co-authors, and there's about an 8 or 9 hour time change between us. So about the time I'm getting ready to go to bed, they're waking up. And so I have to adjust my sleeping schedule because it's easier for me to adjust mine than for 3 or 4 people over there to adjust theirs.
What is your writing software of choice?
My writing software of choice. Well, for fiction, it's Microsoft Word when I'm writing in prose. And when I'm writing screenplays, I was just introduced to this program called First Draft, and I absolutely adore it. You just have to put in your character names and dialogue, or whether you're writing action or parenthetical directions or camera shots, and it formats it all for you. You don't have to sit there and think about the formatting while you're writing.
Okay. How much research did you do for your book?
Well, for my 4 novels that I've written, the Dragon Lords of Demnonia series, I did a ton of research. I was using an Arabic culture and I didn't know much about it. I thought I did. I watched Lawrence of Arabia, but there was a lot more to it than that. And I'd also read the Bible several times, and there's a lot more to it than that. And I interviewed people from Saudi Arabia. I studied the Aladdin stories more. I went out, there was a D&D module called Al-Qadim, and I read through that. And I also went out on the internet and found a lot of sites that gave you like the clothing, the styles of tapestries that they use, their tents, their pillows, their types of metalware, their different things that they ate, their clothing, all that sort of stuff. And I then worked that into the story, trying to remember to put it in that culture when I was writing. And when I went back and edited, I could catch when I had gone to medieval instead of the Arabic culture and translated from one to the other.
Okay. What do you need in your writing space?
My writing space, first and foremost, is the computer. And then I have a hard drive that I back up to because I lost a lot of stuff once by not having it backed up properly. So now I don't take any chances. I back up everywhere. And then I have my printer, and I have space enough that I can get a legal pad on the desk and lots of pens. Never have too many pens. And I have a mouse that I use because I prefer to, instead of using my laptop keyboard, I prefer using a mouse. And I have a full-size keyboard on a pull-out shelf under my desk, because I'm a touch typist and the keys on a laptop are too close together for me.
Okay. Do you write short stories as well as novels?
Yes, I write short stories as well as novels. I've had a couple win awards on the internet, and I do a lot of fan fiction writing, particularly Mercedes Lackey fan fiction. I've got a website, www.scriptorium101.com, that I have a lot of the fiction posted at.
What is your favorite writing snack and or drink?
Oh, it's a drink. My favorite writing thing to have is a glass of iced tea. I go through a lot of iced tea a day.
What's your favorite and least favorite part of writing?
My favorite part of writing is when I am just going through the first time constructing the story and just letting the characters tell me what they're doing and what they're saying. My least favorite part is probably editing. because you've got, oh no, it's not editing, it's marketing. It's definitely marketing, because you need a completely different set of skills for marketing than you do for actually sitting there and writing the manuscript. And it's something that's very hard for a writer to learn. And I've tried hiring people to do it for me and never really made my money back doing that. So I'm doing marketing myself now.
What do the words writer's block mean to you?
Writer's block is something I used to get, and I realized it was because I was working on one project at a time. Now I work on several projects at the same time, and if I get blocked on something, I switch to another project, and I find that works very well for me because I never stay stuck on any one thing.
What part of the book, of any of your books, did you have the hardest time writing?
The hardest thing for me to write are actually villains. I can get into the head of heroes very easily, but coming up with villains and actually writing dialogue for them is really hard for me to do. I can do it better when they're interacting with a hero, but when I have like two villains talking, I find that difficult.
Which is more important, the plot or the characters, and why?
The characters are more important than the plot, because if you put characters together, they generate the plot. If you try to, that was the problem I was having with my screenplays when I was plotting them out, because I'd have the plot and then I had to force the characters to fit the plot rather than letting the characters produce the plot. So that's what I've been doing lately, and I'm having better luck with sales.
Okay. What part of any of your books was the most fun to write?
The most fun I have writing is in the Dragon Lords of Domnonia series. There's a character named Kashan, and he's like the right-hand man of Shasta, who's the main character. And it's scenes between those two, because I love the relationship between the two of them. And that's a lot of fun for me to write.
Okay. Which characters do you relate to the most?
Shasta, I think I relate to the most. He's a little more ADHD than I am, but I think I'm sitting on his shoulder in a lot of the stories just simply because I like him so much. The one after Shasta would be Tifa, his dragon, and she has a lot of same character traits that I have. So I like writing her as well.
What are the best characteristics for your heroes?
Best characteristics for my heroes are, well, with Shasta, it's that he doesn't have a clue about his world. He was raised away from dragons, and he's suddenly been thrown in with a bunch of dragons. And he can't recognize that a lot of them are shapeshifters, and he doesn't know a lot about the culture of the dragon riders, as opposed to, he grew up on a caravan, so he knows the caravaneers' culture, but he doesn't really understand dragons or their riders. And so it's fun to watch him, I watch them in my head, doing things that his friend Kashan just can't understand, how he cannot know something, because Kashan was raised among the dragon riders. And Kashan's the same way with caravans. He doesn't know anything about the caravans. So when they're forced onto a caravan in one of the later books, Shasta has to kind of hold Kashan's hand, lead him through the culture, the way Kashan's been doing with Shasta.
Okay. How do you accept the challenge of writing characters of the opposite sex?
Writing characters of the opposite sex. Well, there's probably a reason that I make a lot of my male characters gay. I love writing the gay characters as both male in particular. I do some where it's a pair of females, but they're both not like me. I am not a typical dress-up girl type person. I'm much more tomboyish, and so that's what a lot of my female characters are. I struggle when I'm writing a female character more than when I'm writing a male character. I've always been jealous of male writers because to be dressed as a male writer, you toss on a jacket with some patches on the elbows. And to dress like a female writer, there's no stereotype for what a female writer looks like. So I'm always struggling for how I dress when I go for an interview.
Do you feel your books are queer positive?
Yes, I do feel like my books are queer positive because I just treat them like, I treat the characters like anybody else. I do have characters in the story that are negative toward the LGBTQ characters because I need some kind of foil for them to bounce off. But those are villains in the story.
How do you know what's going on in your characters' heads?
I know what's going on in my characters' heads because I kind of sit on their shoulder and I try to think like that particular character will think. And because of the way I write, the character will often say what the character is thinking. I can tell when I'm having a problem because the characters will start saying, that doesn't sound like you, or you wouldn't say something like that. It's my subconscious telling me I need to go back and rewrite that scene.
How much do your books change between the first draft and what is actually published?
Ooh, how much the books change between my first draft and what is published depends on a number of things. I find that my first draft is pretty close to what I wind up with when I get done to my editing stage. Then it goes to an actual editor, and that is usually where the books change a lot. And I just had a writing workshop last week, and the person was saying that in the writing process, the editors just hated her work and would change it so it didn't look like the same book. Well, having been a writer for 40 years, that happens with every book you write. It almost never looks the same as what you started with by the time it gets finished.
Okay. What's the difference between your editing style and the professional editor's style?
The difference between my editing style and the professional editor's style is I know all the backstory and what's going on in the characters' lives, and I know which one. Shashta's an unreliable narrator, I know that. And the professional editors don't know the backstory, and they don't always recognize things like Shashta being an unreliable narrator.
Okay. Do you write for others?
I write to please myself. I find that makes my writing more approachable than if I'm writing for others. My screenplays, I was told to write for an audience, and that also made my writing seem very stiff. Whereas when I'm writing for myself, it just flows better.
How do you use social media as an author?
I use social media to advertise my books. I've got about 5,000 followers on Facebook, and I use all different kinds of social media. You're watching this on YouTube, and I use Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, all other, all the different kinds of media. I try to grow my audience, and I also use it to engage with fans, talk to them about my different ideas for characters and stories, and ask them what they would like to hear, what they would like to see, which were their favorite characters, which scenes they like the best, and things along those lines.
Which social media do you feel the fans engage with you the most?
Definitely Facebook is the place where fans engage with me the most. It just seems more approachable, and you can talk more without worrying about word count, like on Twitter. I have a formal page for each book, and then I have a chat list for each book, and we engage on chat a lot more than we do on the formal page.
Okay. Have you ever Googled yourself, and what did you find?
Oh yes, I've Googled myself. Everybody should do it. It's very interesting. I find that my nonfiction is much more popular than my fiction. My name is everywhere on the nonfiction, and I find that I'm much more popular overseas than I am in the US.
What is the difference between destructive and constructive criticism of your work?
Destructive criticism of my work makes me feel like I don't want to write anymore. And I've learned over the years to just ignore that. Constructive criticism changes my view of how I'm looking at a scene or character. I try to make it better given the feedback that I've gotten. And it usually makes the story better than what it was before.
What was the best constructive criticism you received on any of your fiction books?
The best constructive criticism I got was from the person who's asking me questions right now. And it was that she liked Tafa a whole lot more than I did. So I took a new look at the character and reworked her. So she was more like something my friend liked than what I was picturing her as.
How do you deal with negative book reviews?
Negative book reviews are tough for anybody, and I look and see if there's anything valuable in the review, but often the negative book reviews are just trying to trash you, and those I just ignore because they're not saying anything meaningful or helpful.
So what's the best advice you would give somebody who is maybe a budding writer who would receive negative reviews of their work?
I would tell a budding writer who's receiving negative reviews just to ignore it at the moment because you're not distinguishing between things that are helpful and not helpful. The best advice I ever received is maybe the next question. That I ever received as a writer was seat of the pants to the seat of the chair, because you're never going to get anything written if you're not actively writing.
If your book were made into a movie, which style would you like the filmmaker to use?
I'm actually having this problem right now. My books, Dragonlord books, are being made into a movie, an animated TV series. And although it would be fun to have it with CGI, it's a lot easier to have the animation a lot less expensive. Studios like less expensive. And you can do a lot more things with the animation that you just can't possibly do with real life actors.
What book or books are you currently reading?
What books am I currently reading? What am I currently reading? I'm reading Magic's Promise by Mercedes Lackey, and that's the middle book in her Vaniel series, Last Herald Mage.
Okay. What book do you feel the most influential in giving you just the extra oomph to work on your own fiction writing?
That's a good question. I just think it's a bunch of different novels that I've read that I've liked. One that I really liked was Frank Herbert's Dune, and that one I try to copy a lot in my own writing. You'll see at the beginning of his chapters, he has quotes from different writings from his cultures that he's presenting. And so I've used that in the Dragonlords of Demonia series.
And what does success mean to you?
Success means to me that people start giving me positive feedback on my books, that they like my work, that I'm making their lives a little better for having read what I've written. And that's the end of the questions. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please click like and subscribe to my channel, and Have a good day. No.